that have, well, I guess, Andrea, do you want to lead off and introduce yourself again, or and Path a
Uh,
little bit for our
yeah,
new?
sure. Hi everyone, I'm Andrea. I'm EVP of Path Education for Nucleate, and we run a lot of different educational programming, including speaker series on different topics open to the public. And this is a part of one of the Inside series that Ryan's been working on building out on um, kind of fundraising in the and life science entrepreneurship space. And I'll pass it off to him and he can introduce this session and the speakers.
Sweet. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, so the overall goal here is to kind of provide additional fundraising mechanisms for our early stage startups, and kind of two of those avenues, other than, the typical venture capital, is angel investing and philanthropic. So super excited about the panel that we have here today. So I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves, kind of give a little background about who you are, kind of what your role is in your current company, and then, we'll kind of dive into, the specific company itself and your strategies for these early stage companies. So I am going to lead it off with Lily, since she's top left on my screen.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Lily Clark. I'm a senior associate at Idaho Philanthropies and LH Capital. We are a family office here in Dallas that spends our time investing both philanthropic and for-profit capital across our principal Lyda Hills core focus areas, which are all things science and nature. So we have the very fun job of getting to kind of explore a bunch of philanthropic and investment opportunities across those two core areas.
Awesome. Zach, we'll go you. So it's male or female, male, female.
All right. Well, thanks, Brian. It's great to be here. I'm Zach Storms. I'm one of the founders of Startup TNT. And we are equal parts angel investors, fund managers, and community activators. We're actually the largest pre-seed investor in all of Canada. We started in Edmonton, Alberta, and we now operate across Saskatchewan, Alberta, and British Columbia. We've invested about $17 million now into 110 pre-seed, seed stage startups. About 20% of those are from the life sciences space. And we have a couple of life sciences specific investment tracks that we do. And we also host parties for startups every single week. We host a happy hour called Thursday Night Tradition. That's in our name, Startup TNT. And next week is week 300. We hosted in 4 different cities now across Western Canada. And then we also host big, massive public pitch nights as part of our investing process called the Investment Summit. I'll talk more about that throughout the day. And then we also manage a small VC fund that co-invests with our angel investors. And we're actually over the next few years looking to grow that into a large family of VC funds investing in pre-seed and seed stage companies with our angel investors across North America.
Awesome. And then last but not least, Heather.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm real excited for what you guys are doing. I'm Heather Gilker. I'm based in Dallas, and I help run an angel network called Swan Impact Network. My background is around investing. I spent a lot of time doing the traditional things. I was a hedge fund analyst, an equity asset allocator. I worked inside a family office. I helped develop the family office region for Fidelity. I stepped away from all of that in 2018. I've been spending all my time. I've done a pivot so I take my finance skills towards impact so I can raise capital when I want to. I spend a lot of time on this impact network. However, we are a nonprofit. Our goal is to educate the next generation of impact investors and entrepreneurs. And we have, like Zach, invested about $18 million since 2016 across 40 different companies. We're doing pre-seed through Series A. And actually, Zach, we've invested in 2 or 3 Canadian companies. So that's fun. We just had one pitch last Thursday night. She beamed in live from Montreal. So real excited to be here. I'd say that about 30% of the dollars we've allocated, our angels have allocated, have been in the healthcare space. So I look forward to talking about it.
Awesome. So I just want to quickly go over kind of some of the logistics for the event. So it'll start off with a moderated Q&A, followed by open floor and Q&A. But if you do have questions, please feel free to type them in the chat and we can deviate from the moderated questions to your questions if there's a ton of them. So really kind of the flow of this will go as you guys as the audience want. But to start off, can you kind of just talk a little bit about your respective companies and really what kind of benefits you can bring to these early stage companies? So we'll start with you, Heather.
Sure. So we are early stage, as we said. We have got a collective of about 90 angels. Most of them are in Texas, but not all. We've got some outside of Texas. And I think what everyone's passionate about is getting involved when they can, whether that's being a board of observer, being an advisor to companies. And in the cases where we can be supportive, we like to. We've also got over, I think we've got about 60 associates who are not accredited investors. They're not angels, but they like to help us work on impact. They're excited about impact. Maybe they want to learn how to do venture someday, or they're just, really excited about what they do. One of our newest board members has got her MD and her master in public health, and she brings us a world of experience and can really, is an example of ways that we can help companies think about, have you thought about how, reimbursement codes or the clinical path or those sorts of things for that. When we look at what we've invested in the past, don't forget I'm dealing with angels. I'm not calling capital, so it's what my angels are interested in. We have found we are more attracted to medical devices, healthcare services, less attracted to the really big moonshot bets that are therapeutics, just because it takes a long time, and if you're an angel, you're likely to get diluted in that process. That said, we have invested in a couple that are doing some really interesting things. So I would say medical device. We are also super proud that about close to 60% of our founders are underrepresented. It's not a have to, but it's something we really care about. And if we've got a jump ball, if we're looking at two companies, we'll probably choose to bring the company in that's got underrepresented founders to pitch.
Awesome. And then we'll just continue on with Zach, talk a little bit about your fund or your firm.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we have Heather and I have a lot in common. So we believe at Startup TNT that the local community is in fact best positioned to identify their highest potential founders, and in particular, the business leaders from the local community. So a big part of our entire thesis and mandate is to get more seasoned, experienced business leaders to invest in the next generation of founders coming out of their community. So a lot of what we do is training new people about the ins and outs of angel investing, and that's how we run our investment summits. It's an 8-week shared due diligence process among the angel investors. They put in money up front, just a small commitment, $5,000, and they work together as a team and invest in a local startup. And usually that startup ends up raising like between $150 and even up to $500,000 because investors get excited and put more money into it. And so in terms of the type of company, it's really from any industry, any type of company in your local community that's raising probably like a pre-seed to seed stage round, sort of $500,000. I'm in Canada, so $500,000 up to like 3 million. Seed rounds are a little smaller up here. And I'm not sure what more I need to say. The backgrounds of these companies can be from all walks of life. So I mentioned that we did 20% of our companies are life sciences here in Edmonton. We have a strong life sciences ecosystem, and we actually run a life sciences specific summit out of Edmonton once a year, where we specifically invest in a life sciences company. But honestly, our thesis and our belief is more in investing in the highest potential local founders, less on what specific industry that they're in.
Awesome. And then Lily, obviously you're coming at this at a different angle.
Yes. So we have come across this from a bunch of different angles. One of our kind of core initiatives over the last few years has really been trying to grow the broader life sciences sector in Texas, and especially in the North Texas region. So we've done that in a few different ways. Investing is one of those things. Philanthropy is a big one of those things. We are really focused on how we can convene the broader ecosystem and surround founders with the resources and the networks that they need to really be successful. So I mentioned earlier that we deploy kind of a combination of philanthropic and for-profit capital. So we're kind of able to take this flexible approach where we can say, you know, what's the problem that we're trying to solve and the right type of capital or the right type of initiative to try to solve it. So sometimes that might mean a grant to a research lab at a university or research institution. And sometimes that might mean filling critical gaps that our ecosystem needs. The biggest example I can think of is at Pegasus Park, which some of you may have been to, is a 26-acre biotech and life science innovation focused campus here in Dallas that is really focused on providing the lab facilities and infrastructure that founders need once they've spun out of the university setting, as well as space for the broader ecosystem to convene, whether that mean accelerators or investors or university partners. So again, we've kind of come across supporting founders in a number of different ways, whether it be through capital or through kind of network opportunities and infrastructure.
Awesome. Obviously each one of you can bring their own benefit to these early stage companies, but, in terms of communication and getting in touch with each of you and your companies, what would you say is the best way to do that? And with regards to that, would you say you're pretty specific on the stage of the company, or are you willing to kind of help companies, at a certain time point? So I'll kick that back off to you, Lily.
Sure. In terms of the types of companies, we are kind of issue area agnostic, stage agnostic. I will say our principal, Lida, has a saying that she likes to do what others can't or won't do. I think it's one of the benefits of a philanthropic office, is that oftentimes we're willing to take on a different risk profile in this space, often meaning earlier stage, perhaps when a concept is getting ready to commercialize. That's where I think a philanthropic funder can oftentimes be really helpful before traditional VC is willing to step in. So we really are kind of agnostic when it comes to issue area or disease area. In terms of getting in touch, I feel like there are a few things I can say. I mentioned earlier, a lot of time just trying to kind of grow this broader ecosystem and network in the region. So we spent a ton of time with different accelerator programs out there that are working with a bunch of impressive founders. So whether that be through a group like Mass Challenge or Health Wildcatters, or through incubator programs like biolabs, those are groups that we spend a lot of time with and really like to kind of establish connections through those, as well as different research collaborations with other grantees of ours. So we've spent a lot of time with groups like UT Southwestern, major health and research institutions around the region. And so it's always really exciting to meet innovators who have established kind of research collaborations with those institutions as well. And then I think, it's always, once you have made the connection with the philanthropic funder, whether it's us or someone else, it's always, really helpful to kind of go into an initial meeting when the founder has a strong idea of kind of what the mission alignment might be between the organization and the company. So I think I'll pause there. I'm happy to answer any questions or kind of, there's a number of routes we can take with that.
Awesome. I'll pass that off to Zach.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. One of the unique things about TNT is that you don't actually need like a warm introduction to get a hold of us. We're actually kind of structured as a bunch of strangers doing deals together by design, which I think is like one of our unique defining features. So we're actually like running a summit right now. We'll recruit investors to all work together. They get to know each other. They get to know the companies, and then they select the company that the group collectively decides is the highest potential investment. And so by definition, they don't know the founders yet. And so if people want to just get in touch with me and get some feedback, I'm happy to do that. We do specialize in these kind of pre-seed and seed stage spaces, kind of before Series A. And often kind of like an ideal founder is raising their first major round of capital outside of friends and family with us at TNT. And maybe I'll just say like one other comment here about kind of this stage. which is, I'll paraphrase something I learned from another investor mentor of mine, is that at this pre-seed and seed stage, when you're just at the beginning stages of traction, you're just at the beginning stages of maybe building those partnerships in life sciences and building your product, the investors are really looking for conviction in you at the founding team to go execute on this exciting opportunity that you're going after. And so maybe think about that as a founder when you're reaching out to investors. What is uniquely suited to you to take this business forward? Whether or not in the science space, that might be, you might be part of the team that developed this brand new technology, or maybe you're partnered with them. Maybe you publish this in like the top journal. What are the types of things that you can really get the investors excited about at these very early days that you and your team are the ones to really capitalize on this exciting new opportunity?
Awesome. Then Heather?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I feel like I want to come to Zach's happy hours. I'm sorry I'm far away. I love that he's pulling strangers in. I have pulled strangers. They were strangers to us when they joined, and now they're friends. I can't believe the friends that I've made that I would not otherwise know. And that when we pull our collective intelligence together, it's just really fun. I don't know anything about green hydrogen. I've learned a lot from my engineers. I know a lot about strategy and financials, et cetera, but just put all that together. I want to say something about something Zach alluded to about, first of all, how to reach us. We're very open. You can go to Swan Impact Network and you can find out a load of information about us. And we need to redo our website. We're working on it. It is deep. It is wide. It's hard to find your way around, but there's a lot of information on there. We do webinars. I'm happy to listen to a founder and talk to them and help them figure out, is this the good time to try to apply to us, or is it somebody else? Is it somebody that maybe has a pre-seed fund that wants to help incubate something to get it a little bit further along? There are times where we listen to folks and say, hey, I think you really might want to talk to an accelerator like Mass Challenge, or maybe there are other things you maybe need to work on before you apply to us. And we're happy, and we've done that. We've said you're too early to a company in 2016. We invested them in 2019. We've invested in them 3 times since then. And we're happy to build those relationships early. I've taken time to go and listen to the researchers and the clinicians and the doctors at UT Southwestern. I'm part of a group that does that on a quarterly basis. And to build on something that Zach said, we want to hear what is your passion, and you need to think about that. So it is not unusual to hear a fabulous researcher who feels like they've done all this amazing research. There's just this wonderful outcome, and the hardest part is over. And for what they've done with their research, yes, it is. But if they want to commercialize it, the hardest part is just beginning. So the question is, do they want to do that? Or do they want to bring in a team around them to help them do that? Or, I listened to this great company pitch a couple of years ago at Pegasus Park, where we also have an office. And she developed this amazing gadget to make it safer for emergency room surgeons to just basically protect their eyes. And we asked her afterwards, well, what do you think? Are you going to run this business? Like, no, I want to be the chief of the ER room. There aren't many women chiefs, and that's great. It's just great. Be honest with yourself about where you are in your journey and where you want to take it. And it doesn't mean that your baby is not worth taking to grown-up stage. The question is, do you want to do it? So that's just something I want to say, because scaling these into the next stage is where the real fun happens. And folks like Health Wildcatters or Techstars or Mass Challenge can really help you think that through. And we like to look at you when you've got a minimum viable product, or you've got something that's, you've got somebody that maybe is really interested, and you're just this close to just pulling the things together to get it going. So
Awesome. So I'm going to start kind of combining some of the questions that are being asked. So this is going to be a two-part question. Uh, so the first part is obviously, Lily, Heather are both located in Texas. Zach, you're in Canada. Obviously there's a focus for that specific region. But would you say that your companies are open to, other early stage companies in other locations? And then the second part would be, well, I'll let you answer that first. Um,
I'll go first because we look at anything in the United States and at this point Canada, um, and 30% of the companies we have invested in are in Texas. So we will look outside of Texas.
And
awesome. What about you? Oh, sorry.
yeah, from our perspective, I would say we certainly, with a lot of our ecosystem building work, have kind of a like the bullseye of the target is for sure in kind of this North Texas region and Texas as a whole, but doesn't mean that we're not open to looking at what else is out there. We, have a really broad grant making portfolio that certainly includes grantees all across the country and some around the world. So certainly open to looking at anything. But I would say like kind of our target area is this North Texas ecosystem building work.
Awesome. You, Zach?
Yeah, and we kind of employ a chapter style model. So we set up TNT operations in different cities, and then in those cities, we really focus on local investors supporting local founders. So we currently operate across Western Canada. However, for some of our themed investment summits, like right now we're doing one in agri-food, we're expanding that broader and broader. And so our next life sciences summit, which will be most relevant to this group, will be taking place in the early fall, like August and September, late summer and fall. And we're planning to make that at least Canada national in scope. So hopefully got a few Canadians on here. I know there's a bunch coming to Edmonton actually in May. And so we're looking for Canadian life sciences companies across the country in August and September.
Awesome. And then the second part is obviously, we talked about the region, but can you kind of elaborate on the vetting process in terms of what you really look for specifically in these early stage companies? So we'll start with you, Zach.
Sure. And we follow kind of a standard process, but it's pretty similar to raising money from another pre-seed firm or a seed stage firm. And I'm curious to hear Lily and Heather's process on this. But so what we do is we have all the companies apply. It's a relatively simple application focused on a pitch deck and some other basic information. And then our investor group reviews the application, scores them, and selects like 15 to 20 to participate in the full process. And that group of 15 to 20 gets at least one meeting with a small group of investors, or that like first coffee meeting of like 30 to 45 minutes where you get to know the founders and learn a little bit about like the story, what's going on. This is that first step where like, are you helping the investors build conviction in you as a founder in this like 30-minute meeting? And then also we host a community pitch night where you get to pitch to all of our investors, but also the broader community, because a large part of what we try to focus on is not just finding a good deal, but supporting local founders. And so getting a network effect of many people supporting these founders. And so we do a big public pitch night as part of it. And then from that, we nominate a smaller group of usually around 8 to 10 companies to go through like probably more rigorous formal due diligence, where we actually have them create a data room for us. We supply about a checklist of up to 65 or so items that they might want to compile together. Depends a little bit on the stage of their company. They might not need them all. But this runs everything around like financial modeling, intellectual property, go-to-market strategy, the team strategy, all these different aspects that are important in building any business for the investors to review. And then at each step along the way, the investors will actually vote companies through the process. And the final stage is negotiating the deal and voting on the final investment the whole group's going to go in. It takes about 8 weeks.
Awesome. Heather?
Sure. So we just came toward the end of our first quarter cycle. We get applications. Anybody can find us on Dealum. We charge a $50 fee. We started doing that because we just wanted people to understand our thesis. We don't want any more betting platforms to apply to us. So that's the primary reason. We really care about impact first. not betting. So anyway, we will get the applications. We will, like Zach said, we will score them and we'll take them through a down selection process. We'll take that down to 15 or 20, and our volunteers will get together and talk through that. And then we will invite 6 to 8 semifinalists to come and pitch to the collective of volunteers before we ever have our final pitch night. They have loaded a bunch of stuff up into DLM, like the financials and all sorts of stuff, but we haven't taken it to the due diligence level just yet. We will listen to them for 15 minutes, but then we ask 45 minutes of questions, and that's where we really learn a ton. And that's where we're focusing on the team. I can't say enough about how important the team is when you're investing in something that is early stage, because I love everybody's financials, but I don't believe any of them are going to come true. I think about 4% of women have their babies on their due date. I think that your financials are very similar, but I want to see how you're thinking about them and how have you thought about all this stuff. But we'll ask questions like that, and then we'll invite 2 to 3 to pitch. So we had 3 pitch to us this past Thursday. And by the time they pitched to us, we had 100 people listening. We had people in Austin, Houston, and Dallas, and then we had another bunch of people that were remote. And then we decide who we're going to take to due diligence. So we're in the process of putting due diligence teams together now on those 2 to 3, and then we will go through that process, and that can take another 4 to 6 weeks. We've already got a ton of information. We've transcribed all the information from the, semifinal thing. And so that's how we do what we do. Then we send the due diligence memo around to our members, and they can decide if they want to invest or not.
Awesome. And then just to comment on that, do you have a typical time frame in which that whole process takes place?
Sure. So from the time someone pitches to us, which means they've gotten to the final process and we're doing the due diligence, that could be 4 to 6 weeks. But from the time they apply and they go through the pitch process, that's about a month. But that's not taking a whole lot of their time. It's the application. It would be spending time with us in that, for an hour, and then pitching maybe for another hour.
Awesome. And then last but not least, Lily.
Sure. I will start by saying that we certainly have a less structured process than Zach and Heather do. We do not operate on any sort of like cyclical schedule with our grant making and investing. We kind of review proposals all year round. Typically, we'll start by getting kind of an initial intake, whether it's a call or a concept paper, something like that, where we can just kind of get a gauge for what the idea is, how far along is the idea, kind of the basic, what's the request. From there, we'll kind of gauge a few things internally with our team. One being what's our capacity for taking on a project of the given size, and also what's the mission alignment. Is it something that really aligns with kind of the thematic mission that we're trying to accomplish in our office? And if there is interest in moving forward with diligence, then it's usually kind of a combination of back and forth meetings with the leadership team of the organization or the company. Our team is always full of questions, so we always are kind of going back with a bunch of questions that we have. And then reviewing things that I think are probably very similar to Heather and Zach, where it's looking at, what is there a really well-defined problem? What's the issue that you're trying to solve? Is there a really compelling solution? What makes that solution unique compared to competitors? We're certainly looking at things like what are, what does the rest of the market look like? What are competitors doing? And what makes your technology or innovation uniquely suited to solve a certain problem? And then looking at things like what is the potential for impact if it's a philanthropic grant. We're really focused on like what does success look like to the founder or to the PI, whomever it is. And then we also oftentimes, especially in our grant making, want to make sure that we have a clear answer to what I mentioned earlier about Lida's theory of giving, which is do what others can't or won't do. So things like, what will this philanthropic grant be able to allow you to do that perhaps other forms of capital wouldn't. Why now? Why the size that you're requesting? So in terms of timing, I would say because we don't have as structured of a process, there are some factors like, have we worked with the grantee before, or is this the first time that we're working with someone and we're establishing a relationship? But I would say like typically especially if it's an investment, like 8 or 10 weeks or so. But again, because we're not operating on a specific schedule, it can kind of fluctuate a little bit.
Awesome. So this question was actually geared specifically towards Philanthropic. So Lily, I'm going to have you take the lead on this, but then kind of transition it to both Heather and Zach as well, and see their side in terms of angel investing. What kind of outcomes are you looking for as a philanthropic donor? I know you kind of briefly mentioned some of them, and then can you elaborate on, because, you primarily, right, we have that North Texas focus. What would you say would be the best way to be able to find and reach out to other philanthropic donors kind of elsewhere?
Yeah, great questions. First, in terms of kind of measuring impact, like what does success look like? To be honest, I think it can look like a lot of different things depending on the project. So for example, like we in our office oftentimes will, help offer funding that might be a bridge towards receiving additional capital down the road. So success in one case might look like, okay, the work that the company or the organization was able to do with our grant allowed them to like qualify for a certain federal grant or state grant, or got them to a place where they're ready to like raise a pre-seed or Series A. So sometimes that is like what success looks like to us. Other times it might mean something like, how many patients could be impacted, like, are you getting kind of further along in your regulatory process? Like, I think it can look like a lot of different things. And so oftentimes when we're working with a grantee, we will part of our kind of diligence process really is like, okay, let's work together to really figure out what kind of impact metrics you are trying to accomplish with this grant, because it can really, really depend on the project and the stage and all of that. In terms of networking and meeting philanthropic funders in your local area, I mentioned earlier that we spend a lot of time just with various kind of ecosystem building groups around here. So just taking North Texas as an example, like we spend a lot of time with Heather's team, we spend a lot of time with different accelerators in the region, and really kind of just getting out into the community through their various events. So I would say, like, it sounds so simple to say, but like go to the events that Heather and Zach are hosting, because like oftentimes the funders are there trying to meet people like you all. And then also, like, if you're meeting with an investor or a philanthropist, like don't be afraid to ask for referrals to others who might have kind of a mission aligned interest. This happens with us all the time, where if we receive something that maybe won't be a fit for us, we have plenty of other people in our network who it might be a fit for, who might be interested in the topic at hand. And we also receive those referrals from others in our network all the time. So I would just say, like, don't be afraid to ask if, whoever you're meeting with, like, has other connections that they're willing to make.
Awesome. And then Zach and Heather, can you kind of comment on, the angel investing side? What does success look for you? What does that look like? And obviously it's specific to you in general, but, can you also kind of shed some light on, ways that these early stage founders can contact angel investors in their local region?
Sure. So I'll start. So I think for us, we're trying to operate from a feeling of abundance. We're a tiny organization with a tiny budget, but there's no need for us to hoard or hold on to anything or feel like we're competing with any other angel network. And to that extent, we're looking for ways that we can try to make the founder's journey easier, less friction. To that end, I've got some things I've just got to live with. We're a quarterly group. The way that we screen, it takes time, it takes some energy. But I've got other angel networks that meet monthly or 11 times a year. And we look for ways we can collaborate with them. And if, like, like Lily said, if there's a group that, that's not the right time in the cycle for us, there may be somebody else. So we've recently announced and are working on a collaboration with Cowtown Angels. They've done a lot of healthcare, and they've got a strong accelerator at Tech Fort Worth. So I think there are certainly ways that I hope that we can talk to Zach after this and find ways to collaborate with Zach. We've got some clean tech collaborators because we've done a lot in that area. So whether it's on the West Coast or the East Coast or their venture capital firms, we're trying to find ways that we can help the founder along their journey. And if we do that and we're already an investor, it just makes us more successful. So for us, impact happens for us when there is a result that is successful. That success may not have to be unicorn status. It may be a liquidity event that has a return on it. That's exactly why our angels are investing, but we're willing to give up that wild 10x return if there's also impact involved. So that said, we still like profit. And so for us, if we can help them along that journey and get to the Series A and the Series B or the acquisition and those sorts of things, then that's the ultimate success. But we really think long and hard about what are they doing to make the world better? Are they making healthcare more accessible, more affordable? Are they solving a problem that hadn't been solved before and making it easier? And so those are the things that we look for success.
Awesome. Zach?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think Heather said it well. I think our angels have a similar philosophy in that, it's not explicitly an impact investment, but when you look at the overall impact of what we're doing, it's the impact itself. It's so much more than just the return for the investor. I think if you looked at something like all of the companies we've invested in, something like 60% of them might be directly aligned with like a UN sustainable development goal, because we have a lot of agri-food companies, clean tech companies, life sciences companies, all types of companies out there that I think investors are excited about from an investment perspective, but they're also having a huge impact on the world. And then I'll just maybe share like, what does success look like? Maybe I'll share like 2 quick things on this. I was just talking to another founder who just successfully raised like a $7 million seed round. The thing that he told me he did in terms of building those relationships is that he'd been slowly interacting with investors over a long period of time, like 2 years. And so when it came to raise his round, he'd already had a first contact with like, a Rolodex of like 80 or so investors. And I thought there was a really interesting point he made, and it's really true. It's good advice for all of us. He said, I didn't take out my pitch deck in any of the first meetings. Each meeting was really just like a relationship building, get to know you. I'll talk about myself. I want to learn about you, and then we'll see where this goes. And I think that's like a really good advice for all of us when we're trying to build relationships with investors or really with anyone, that like, don't go to the sale first, build a relationship, get to know each other. It's kind of like a relationship building, a trust building exercise with investors. And then when it comes to like, what does success look like? Well, I was chatting with another entrepreneur recently who's gone from his first sale about 18 months ago to now having over $1 million in revenue. And a couple of things when it comes to like using the community to support this founder, kind of like emphasizing what Heather was getting at. He met his technical co-founder at one of our TNT events. So Lily's right, come to our events. That's where you can meet other people. He built a relationship with one of our investors who is in a similar space and has actually recently sold his own company. And that investor has now been meeting with him once or twice a month, even sits in on prospective interviews with new candidates to help him out. And so just like the broader network of our community has really helped this founder now go from when we first invested, it was pre-revenue to over $1 million in revenue and off to the races. And so obviously long-term success, investors are getting their money back, but these are the types of impact that makes everybody feel good on that route to financial success as well.
And can I add on to something that Zach just said about success? What does success look like? Success looks like hard work, but one of our founders who's been very successful taking something from ideation to revenue, spent a lot of time going to pitch contests and would win pitch contests. And this is typically non-dilutive capital. And it takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of courage to do that. But it's working on the pitch, crafting, the message, but building relationships. People are getting exposure to her and her company so that when she was ready to do her next round, it was just so much easier. So to Zach's point, you've got to start the clock ticking. People have got to understand what it is that you're doing and you're passionate about. And they may need some time to marinate on it. So you've got to start that relationship. I love that. The old 50-50, you should be listening as much as you're talking kind of thing.
So that actually is I think all of you have alluded it at some point, but trying to find that balance between creating and establishing a relationship with you all, but then also kind of, also keeping that door open for a potential investment. Can you comment on, how you would kind of navigate those waters? Whether it's better to kind of start off with just establishing a relationship in general in the effort that, you can forward their information to your network versus kind of cold messaging and seeing if they're interested in potential investing. So we'll start with Lily because there's a specific question for you following up.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I would say, gosh, I feel like it really, sorry, 1 second.
Oh, you're good.
My Wi-Fi just went out for 1 second, sorry.
Oh, you're
Can
good.
you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, can you say the question one more time?
Yeah. So how would you kind of navigate those waters between
Yeah.
looking for an investment versus just expanding your own network?
Yeah, so I feel like in terms of just the relationship building side, you know, we're always looking to kind of expand our network and build relationships. I love what Zach said earlier about really spending kind of the first meeting getting to know one another is so helpful. I think, we in our office we try to like really be respectful of everyone's time, knowing that every founder out there is insanely busy. So getting to a place where, if we hear an initial idea and we know it's just like maybe thematically not a fit with our portfolio, or we know we don't have the capacity to take it on, like we try to say so early on so that you don't feel like you're kind of continuing to follow up without a result. But if it is something that we think like could be of thematic interest, I think we'll make that clear, even if it's not a yes or a no right away. But again, like I think funders out there like want to be respectful and mindful of everyone's time. So we try to kind of just like have an open line of communication with that. I think it's also like really helpful just from the kind of getting to know who the funder is and how like each one is going to be kind of different based on their cadence of like for us it's helpful to have check-ins every now and then because we don't necessarily have like a regularly scheduled funding cycle like I mentioned earlier. So if something might not be a fit based on capital allocation capacity right now, like maybe it would be 6 months from now, and it's helpful to kind of get a quick follow-up. But for others that might have a more like regularly scheduled process, that kind of form of communication might look a little bit different. I'm not
Awesome.
sure if
No, that helps a lot. Zach?
Okay. Just on relationship building in general, Ryan. You know what? I think getting the warm introduction is pretty critical, I think, to building the relationship. We're a little unique at TNT in that you can apply to TNT. You don't need a warm introduction. You can start building relationships. And that's partially because it's hard to get those introductions. And so we're trying to create a space where as a first-time founder, as a very early stage founder, you can go out there and start meeting people in your community and start building those relationships. And then once you start building a few of those relationships, use your network to get the new introductions. And so yeah, I think I don't know if I have much more to expand on that topic, Ryan. I think like it's a lot of work, it's hard work, and just focus on like the human to human interaction there.
Short but simple. Heather, is there anything you want to add?
I like what Lily said about we try hard to let you know early on if it's a fit or not. But also to Zach's point, I don't think we would have the track record we do for funding underrepresented founders if it took a warm introduction. This network started in 2016. It was 4 white guys, and they were intentional about building this and building it as a diverse network and trying to find diverse founders, and that takes intentionality. And so you do have to be open to we'll take anything from anybody on Dealum as long as you want to spend the $50 application fee. But I highly recommend, if you get a chance to spend time with me or any of the other people whose emails are in our Swan Impact Network website, we'll try to tell you if we think now's a good time or a good fit. That said, I've worked in a family office like Lily. Nothing compares to a warm introduction. So Lily, the whole world wants Lyda Health money, and everybody wants Lily's time and attention. And there are only so many people in that office. We have a small organization, and I've only got so much time, I'll be honest. But if someone has come to me and I've met them at one of my events or at events that we co-host with others, I've just had that initial introduction and I have a chance to visit with them and go, oh yeah, we should talk. To Zach's point, show up. It's, just find out where those events are. I'm not sure where all of you are located, but I just posted on LinkedIn today, Mass Challenge is just taking applications through the 18th of February for a cohort they're building around healthcare and clean tech and I think fintech. So if you're all truly, healthcare people here at Nucleate, you should look at it and see if this is the right time for you. They're a fantastic nonprofit. They don't take equity, and they do really good work. So those are just some of the examples I would give you, and they would love to get applications. So that said, we try as hard as we can. I can't talk to everybody, but I want to try because somebody did that for me, and I feel like I want to pay it forward to the best of my ability. So that's what I try to do.
Awesome. Zach, you wanted to add one thing?
Yeah, I'll just give one little quick anecdote to nail home Heather's point there. Just this morning, I've received 3 cold reach outs from founders that I don't think I've spent any time researching who we are and what we do, and I'm not even gonna open their emails. So you just got to be careful when you're doing cold reach outs. Like, you've really done your homework, you've thought it through, and just to Heather's point, like, the warm introduction is really like the way to go to ensure you get a response.
Awesome. So this question is going to specifically apply to Lily. Can you comment on, Lyda's investment, thesis compared to ARPA H and kind of how those two interact?
Oh, that's such a good question. Okay. I think in some ways they're actually pretty synergistic. Like, I think Lyda really appreciates hearing someone's big idea. Like, if you have, no resource limits, like, what's the biggest thing? Like, what are you so excited about? What's the biggest problem that you're trying to solve? I think that's the kind of thing that we love, especially because oftentimes, we really, like, Lyda often is willing to take on a certain risk profile that involves like getting something started or providing some sort of catalytic funding that could ultimately help something become self-sustaining or lead to other funding sources down the road. So in some ways, I think we're pretty similar, not in others, but I think one thing that I'd like to point out is that, like I mentioned earlier about how one of the kind of pieces that we look at when doing diligence on a grant is like, what can this philanthropic funding do that you can't get elsewhere? And so sometimes we might be asking the question like, okay, why should we give this grant if ARPA H could also give that grant? So we might say like, okay, maybe try ARPA, like try the federal funding source, try the state funding source. And if there's a reason why that's not going to work, then like that it might help us kind of inform like, why is Lyda's grant something that others can't or won't do, like she likes to say. So I think to answer your question, like thematically, there's certainly points of overlap, but it is like, we like to think about how our grants might offer something that other funding sources can't.
Awesome. So obviously there's about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to finish up with, 2 more questions. So the first one is, can you comment on how the current climate affects, or if it does affect your current investment strategy? And then are you kind of changing the focus in how you invest? So Lily, we'll start back off with you.
Okay, I don't know that I'm going to have the most exciting answer right now because I think, as we all know, we are in such a time of uncertainty around kind of it's very relevant back to the federal funding piece. We're still kind of trying to figure out like what exactly a few months from now is that landscape going to look like, and what are the gaps that philanthropy might need to help fill. And so again, not the most exciting answer at the moment because I think right now we're kind of in a state of like take it all in. There's some new big announcement every day. And for us, like being able to kind of fill the right gaps, we just aren't really sure how things are going to shake out in the next few months. So I think right now we're kind of in like a hit pause, like digest everything possible, like stay really up on how our grantees are going to be affected by what's happening in the world right now, and then kind of take action from there.
Awesome. Heather?
So I've been doing a little research, and this uncertainty we're in right now has a massive impact in this space. So in 2024, MD Anderson got 172 million in NIH grants. UT Southwestern got 300 million in NIH grants. Dana-Farber Cancer Research got 87 million. And St. Jude Children's Hospital, which I care deeply about in Memphis, got 117 million. This is real research that's solving a really big problem. And I hope that within a month or two, we have more certainty that some of this can and will stay around. And that said, if it doesn't, we're going to need more Lyda Hills. We're going to need more state funding, and we're going to need to fund more companies in Canada because the Canadian government is still offering wonderful grants and opportunities. And also, I want you as founders to think about this. Oftentimes, people come to us and say, I need to get 750, or I need $150,000 friends and family. And after I get my minimum viable product, then I'm going to raise 750. That's 6 or 12 months from now. And after that, then I'll go raise a pre-seed round that'll help me do da 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 da. I think you need to think about raising 18 to 2 years worth of money. So it's expensive, it's dilutive, but if you're not able to get the non-dilutive grant dollars, and we're in a period of uncertainty, you need to live to see your dream. And you're going to have to, I want you to think hard about raising more money than you think you need. And at the end of the day, it's not what it's worth today, it's what it's worth when you sell it. So that's my strongest piece of advice. And I dearly hope that we get some positive resolution into this environment. And I just don't know. I don't know if we will.
Zach?
Sure, yeah. I can weigh in with the Canadian perspective, which is everyone literally thought we were about to have a 25% tariff just a few weeks ago. And maybe in another few weeks, we are going to get one. And that makes people really nervous. I got founders that are like selling their products into energy companies based out of Houston that are like, shoot, I don't know if our customers are going to buy it with these tariffs coming in. So like, I don't have a good answer for it. But founders are like looking at being ingenuitive and thinking through these things. But Heather's advice is actually probably the best advice, which is there's extra uncertainty right now. And it's also, I would just add to that, extra competitive just to get founding dollars. There's less VC and angel capital dollars in the ecosystem right now than there were a few years ago. So it's more competitive for the private capital. It could be getting a lot more competitive for the grants. And so, just kind of sticking to all those things we covered today, it just becomes more and more important, to think long-term and to make that case to your funding bodies, whether they're granting bodies or private investors.
Awesome. So super helpful. Now you can go on.
Well, I just want to make one more point since we kind of ended, it sounded like a little depressing note there. Heather, someone texted me while we were chatting because they're planning a big event in Edmonton and they were like, we should get Heather to come to it. So we're going to follow with you after this.
I'm there. I love it. Let's come on.
Right.
Yeah, so but before we do close, I know Heather and Zach, you kind of alluded to this, but what would be your final piece of advice to these early stage founders looking to get angel investments, in the way that they can best position themselves to get that funding?
Yeah,
It-
I think.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I'll keep it short and sweet. Like, don't wait too long. Get started. Get out there. Start building those relationships. It takes longer than you think, and it takes more money than you think. So don't sit by and wait. Get out there.
Yeah. Not that any of you have a company that's similar to Rotten Tomatoes, but I did hear a great story from the founders of Rotten Tomatoes when they just kind of started it as a side hustle and then they realized it was getting traction. They actually built something that didn't cost any money and they took it out to a larger than friends and family group to try it out to see if it was working. If you've got ways, and if you're in a space where you feel like you need to do a lot of research for yours to work, but if you can get somebody to pay for it, who's in a space where, let's say it's a, let's say well, I'll use a case in point of a company that I've invested in. It's a company that virtual reality, immersive, the Elderverse, which is a whole phrase that they created. So it's therapeutics for seniors who have Parkinson's, who have sundowning. And before they could ever prove and get the data in about what the impact was, they went and sold it to senior housing facilities, people that pay a lot of money to live there. So, like, impact wise, it was going to take a while to actually show that the impact was there. Could they reach a broader market that can afford to pay? We wouldn't know, but they were able to do that and get it paid for. And then the research has come along to support it. And now they are able to further distribute that across a broader base that includes senior living facilities that people who make below, a certain level and Veterans Administration. So if think about ways that maybe you can get somebody to pay for it. Maybe it's like, wealthy people that are chasing the fountain of youth that want your product. So maybe there's a Cooper clinic like we have in Dallas that the people there might pay for it while you can just do a little beta there before you ever have to go do this broad brush research. It's just a thought.
Awesome. And then to close us out, Lily.
Sure. I would just say the most helpful thing, just being kind of on the side of hearing a bunch of pitches, is really know your audience. Like, do your research on who exactly you're pitching to, because some days you might be talking to someone who has a deep technical background in the space that you're in, and other times you might be talking to someone who has no technical background in the space that you're in. And so being able to bring the story of your work to that audience in a way that they can really relate to and resonate with, I think really, really goes a long way.
Awesome. So I'm going to kind of finish this off here and thank obviously Lily, Zach, and Heather for this amazing panel. Super informative. And then to let everybody know that both seminar series will continue next month. So we'll lead off in, I believe it's March next? Yeah, March 19th. We'll have an accelerators seminar, and then the following week it'll be about commercialization and market evaluation. So definitely please attend if you can. But once again, thank you to everybody for showing up, and then Lily, Zach, and Heather for being on this panel. Super happy about it. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for organizing, Ryan.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
great. Thanks a lot. Bye.
See you, everybody.